in those 10 qualities of a good communist, you will not find love there. Sacrificial love. I'm talking about suffering love, sacrificial love. Yes, you have to sacrifice, but for the sake of humanity. It's not in the sense of for bringing humans to a Übermensch, to the Superman. They said our goal is one day for people to have such a conscience that they will go to work and will not be paid, but they will go to the shops, will take things as much as they need, not more than that, and everything will be perfect.
Well, Saimir, welcome to the podcast. We're going to be talking a little bit about the communist ideology. But before we do that, I want to get some of your background so people know how this ties into your story, which we have a separate episode where you tell your story that will already be released. We'll link that and so forth. But you grew up in essentially the strictest country in Europe, strictest communist country in Europe. Give us a little bit of context there, a little bit of groundwork before we plow into the main topic.
Let me tell you a story. When our dictator, Enver Hoxha, communist dictator, died, everybody was supposed to cry, anyone in Albania, The line was, 1 or 2 kilometers to go and weep to around his casket and all this in Albania. But we were I remember that day we were in our class that the news came. It was we were 10 years old. It was a 4th grade elementary, and everyone. Not most of the children started to cry. Me too. Our not dictator, but our leader, not our leader, but our God has died. So one child in the back of the room, he was not crying. Some of them observed that, but, continued. There was one guy, he stood up, he pointed him, in that day, terrible day, he pointed him and said, "Why are you not crying?" The other friend was saying, "I don't know. Why are you not crying?" And then he said, he started to cry because this other child pointed the finger to him. And I told this story because even in that day, you could see the terror that had brought this type of, it was not an ideology, it was a system of state, police state, that has entered even in the blood in the veins of the children. So, children, they act, they imitate adults. So we were, at that moment, we were imitating, our parents, the generation of our parents, what was happening with the adults, even in that day. So the terror, the fear, spying was everywhere, every day, a danger, a risk. So can you imagine living and in that kind of life? So of course you have to adapt by acting all the time. So this friend was acting like he was a communist follower, even he was 10 years old, and the other was acting like he was not doing anything, and he wanted to cry, but he couldn't. And then in the end, he cried. So it was a painful reality everywhere. I said, even in the previous interview, that it amazed me how human beings have the ability to adapt and to find a way to live even in those circumstances. Yeah, and it amazes me that when you give them, when you give them the opportunity to have life, like Jesus gave to everyone, they just refuse that. That's, I don't know. I mean, I did this myself for 27 years, but even now I don't know how can we be combined in a person these things. So yeah.
So let's drill into that a little. So you're describing Albania, right, which is where you where you still live. Very strict communist regime, I guess you could say, or dictatorship, et cetera. Can you first of all tell me a little bit about like what is the communist ideal? Like what were they even trying to do? And then what have you said you believed in that? Did you believe the communist ideology? Were you, yes, this is the right thing, or did you not really think about it? Yeah, tell me about those two things.
Communist ideology, I mean, yes, even ideology and even in how it is applied, because it is applied differently in different countries, had a high value, highly the moral standard of the character of the communist, of the people who are, or the people who are under the system. So justice, truth, they were preached, strongly in the schools and everywhere. In the working place, they would read newspapers talking about these characteristics before starting to work. Yeah.
Okay. There was almost like how we would have a morning devotions or something. They would have a reading of like communist ideals or something.
It's amazing how close they are, ideology. The ideology, the characteristics of a good and the qualities of a communist. Our dictator, he wrote down 10 commandments of a good communist.
Really?
Yes.
That's also quite ironic because you're like we talked about this a little bit in the other interview, but how Albania was one of, as far as I know, maybe there's been other examples, but one of the only country where they officially, as state policy, we will have no religion, we will be atheists. It's in our constitution. This is who we're going to be. That seems kind of ironic.
Yeah,
what you're describing.
Yeah, here. He said, you have the first quality is, I mean, you have to worship. I'm talking now in Christian terms. You have to be obedient and venerate only the party exclusively. You have to worship only one God. You have to continue and only you have to be obedient only to the ideology and the teachings of the party, which is like the obedience to the word of God. You have to be a good communist. You have to share. You have to have a good fellowship with the others. You have to be the ones who promote fellowship with the others. You have to be a doer of the word, not just only someone who speaks that, but you have to act out, to live out that word. You have to fight the enemies by trying to convince them.
Whoa. Okay.
Yes.
Were these commandments for just your country, or would have this been fairly standard in the other communist? Like, do you know?
I don't know, but I'm not sure even this guy has ever done anything originally, authentically.
Well,
somewhere he has to,
That's so interesting. It's almost like a copy paste for religion.
Yes.
But they don't copy and paste the concept of God.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird when you think about it.
He replaced God,
the dictator kind of.
Yeah, he was God,
In the Communist Party replaces God.
Yes, when he was talking about party, he was party. No one could say anything against the one thing that he was coming to his mind. That was party.
So you're describing what sounds to me like an atheistic religion, which is an oxymoron. I mean, that doesn't even seem possible, but yet it.
Yes.
But it is then.
Yeah.
Kind of. Did you believe all this back then, or did you not? Was it the kind of thing where it wasn't even considered whether you believe or disbelieve? It's just what was.
I like the moral part. I like the quality of a high, value of the morality for good things and bad things and to be true. But there was these qualities, but especially like the philosophers that had the new idea of communism. It was a little thing there when he was saying, we will try to win our enemies by convince them. And then he continued. And that's made the whole difference of that. So if they will not be convinced, then we have to crush them.
Oh.
Yes. Eliminate them.
So there's like this utopian ideal that they have. And so as long as you fit within the ideal, you're fine. But if you don't, we eliminate you.
Yeah.
Which hardly seems to describe utopia, but I guess they had this idea that it was important enough. Let me see if I can get this right. That the concept and the party as a whole were so important that the loss of an individual who's not convinced is not significant enough to matter.
It's totally a humanistic ideology. It comes from humanistic philosophy. So remember when the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, he said God is dead.
Yep. Now, God is dead and we have killed them.
We have killed him. Yeah. He said, now what should we do? That was his idea. What should we do?
How's that quote? We of all men are most to be pitied, I think he says, or something like that. Like this is, whoa, oh no, God's gone.
But now we should be arise at the level of gods. We should be gods now. In other words, he was saying, we should find a way. Now that the Christian morals and values in Europe, which that is another story, and I think is the cause of the problem. I don't think it's the cause of a problem. Philosophers like Karl Marx or Nietzsche or dictators. Probably I will elaborate later that, but my conviction. But I think that's what he said. He said, now we have to find a way. We have to find that was his idea, some Übermensch. What he said. This Superman. This it is overman, which is not a Superman. It is a human being which is arised beyond the humanity that we see
like
today.
Risen to another level. So you're saying that was Nietzsche who came up with
Nietzsche,
that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because I've heard the term. I guess that's German. I wasn't quite confident on what it meant, but I've read about that, and it always struck me as odd. But I guess it's a natural outworking of, God's dead, so we had to figure out how to raise humans to another level. Yes, essentially.
And his idea was also to the level of not having at all morality, get rid of morality, and then find our own path. That's what was he saying. He didn't know it was, but we need some people like this. And then with this ideology, because of this ideology, I strongly believe some Übermensch were revealed in Europe, Mussolini, Adolf Hitler, Stalin, Joseph Stalin. They were, they came out from this kind of ideology, this kind of philosophy, and they built in an ideology like fascism or communism. They were progressive in their mind, that's moved the humanity to another level.
So that's so interesting you mentioned that because it's an underlying philosophy. It seems to me beyond just communism. You see it in a lot of outworkings, right? I was in Denmark and I found this old book from pre-World War II. So it's 1930s Germany. And it was a series that they had been publishing. This is, again, before Hitler and all of that, where it's outlining the great men of history that we should be like. It is like, we need to be striving for this ideal. And so, and it listed them out. And it was people like Alexander the Great and Mussolini and, you know, Julius Caesar, and Adolf Hitler was one of them in this book. And I remember reading that, and the guy who was, he like knew a lot of local history and stuff. He's like, this was an important part for them in thinking, oh, we're going to lift ourselves up to another level, fix all these problems because we strive to be like this. And yet you look at the list of those people and you're like, I don't think I want to be like those people. Like Alexander the Great was really, really nasty. I mean, he killed a lot of people, you know, really evil person, but they were saying this is who you should be like.
Yes.
You know?
And the idea is to, you know, to have this new man, you know, to now has come, has arrived a new man. We have to build this new man. I mean, the motto for communists was, at least in Albania, one for all for one. So these ideals were really, that's sure, they took it from somewhere, but they were, guess what, you know, Bible. But they had to erase God, and they had a reason for that, I think.
Oh, really? What? Okay, why do you say that?
Because the church had shown that God is dead. In history, the church has shown sometimes that God is alive, and that sometimes have proclaimed that God is dead. So the first century, for example, and second century, the third century, they displayed the glory of God and the presence of God to the world. People could see, you know, what is this power in these human beings? That they can pray for their persecutors, tormentors, while they are torn apart from the beasts, where they are crucified. What is this? And the people were drawn, and the people were very curious, you know. And that's why they joined them to start this relationship, because this power was displayed, and they started. They wanted this relation. They wanted this power. They wanted this kind of life, and then they fell in love with the source of this kind of power, which is God. And then they continued like the others for 2 or 3 centuries until the church married with the power, human power, you know, in the mid of 4th century. And then, so interesting, you know, the description of historian Flavius Eusebius, when the bishops of different regions enter in the emperor's palace, Constantine. And he says there, it was wonderful, you know, they were walking, he invited them. I wonder what would happen if they would say, oh, Constantine, you're now a Christian, you converted? Yeah, leave the throne, come to the catacombs, come to the underground church. Ooh. What would happen?
Yeah.
But I don't know what would happen, but what we know is that the church was invited by Constantine. And during the Council of Nicaea, it was his festivals of his 20th year of being an emperor. And then he invited them. And he says, he was a fan of Constantine, this historian. They said, bishops were entering in the palace, and there were bodyguards around with the swords out, you know, and honoring them. And they stayed with them, in the table with Constantine, and on the couches around the table. It was a picture of Christ and the disciples and the church. So guess who was Christ there? And then from there, the display of God's glory to the earth, and most importantly, according to Ephesians chapter 3, verse 10, most importantly for me, it's the reason why we exist is to display God's glory to the heavenly powers. That's what he's saying there. The wisdom, the manifold wisdom of God. So this display started to diminish. And that's why I was amazed in the 16th century about the Anabaptists, because they showed that power, that kind of character of God, of Jesus. They show that. But then after that, the Anabaptists left Europe. They went to the New World. And the marriage between church and state continued with the reformers. And then after a while, we have these philosophers of 17th century, like René Descartes, who said, we are so good in reasoning, we human beings, that without revelation, without a need of revelation, we can understand, we can conclude logically that God exists.
Yeah.
For the first time in history.
Yeah.
And the church, what did they do? They just debated.
And Descartes was famous for that, for his work on, we can show God is real just using our brains, and nothing else. And then future generations of philosophers were like, you're not right, that you got it wrong. You can't, therefore maybe God isn't real. And you start going down this whole thing, and they kind of miss the whole point.
Yeah, but yes, but where was the church?
Right.
Because every time the church rise up at the level of the name it carries, it's there's only one a weapon left to the devil: persecution. But if there is not a rise at this level, there are other things. Like, for example, in the 18th century, French Revolution. All these guys said, we will put out religion not only from universities, not only from, we can think alone now, but even from the state. It was not the church who disconnected from the state. It was the Europeans that disconnected the church from the state. They said, you don't have to do anything with state. And later, a century later, during the 19th century, they said, the church must not put its nose even in everyday life. So with the Industrial Revolution, with Scientific Revolution, they said, no, you don't have a say in this. In medical science, the church had to disclaim, or had to shamefully to accept that it was wrong and wrong and wrong all the time, and then it created this idea that God is dead, the church is not anymore, it's a ancient thing.
But wasn't that a lot of the push of communism, is saying we're the wave of the future, and religion's this dusty thing from the past, it's totally irrelevant to the future. Well, since we're the ones bringing in the future, got to leave religion behind.
Yes, because religion wanted to dance with the world, wanted to dance with the state, and it led the dance for 1,000 years during the medieval ages. But then the leader of the dance started to be, the humanism. From the 17th century and on, for 5 centuries, we see this, the church going after the world and trying to convince. Even today,
it's like, it's always struck me as the grasping for the wrong kind of power. Because you look at the earlier church, and there was power there, but it was a very different kind of power. It was being thrown to the lions kind of power, that kind of, it was suffering love, patience, persistence in faithfulness,
It's not Lord, the same thing.
Yeah, and then you see so many cases where it's like, well, okay, now the church is trying to grasp power by actual worldly power, or the sword, or things like that. And maybe there was a lot of witness that was totally lost there over the years.
Yeah.
In then fact, what's left?
In fact, instead of shining the light of the glory of God, it diminishes it. It fades it out. You see stadiums. There are football teams playing there. People go there. Fans cry and beat drums, and the match ends, and then they go out, and then come the Christians there and look, turn on the light, put a concert, shout, beat the drums, the same thing. And trying to convert for Christ and trying to display God's glory and call it a God glory. No, you're trying to use that power.
Yeah, I see what you're getting at here, because well, when we were talking on the phone, and maybe we'll dig into this a bit later, but one of the points we kept coming back to is this probably comes out of the Enlightenment and, the age of reason and science, that we saw hit Europe a couple hundred years ago and so forth, where we humans can fix everything, that kind of idea. You mentioned French Revolution, that was kind of that concept, and et cetera. You read that all through Karl Marx, right? He's like, we support every revolution ever because that means the people are gonna, take care of all these problems and they'll rise up and fix it. Yeah. It's like, it strikes me as really naive, actually. Okay, so to back up a little bit, one of the critiques that worldviews like communism, say, will make against religion is saying, oh, this is irrational, illogical, easily disproven Christianity. It just no, there's no way. Whereas we, the communists or whatever, we have reason on our side. This is the logical way. We can easily prove we're right. Does that make sense? I'd love to hear your response and critique to that. And you were raised in that system, so did it come across as like, well, yeah, this is the reasonable, rational thing. Of course they're right. Of course Christianity is wrong. Talk to me about that. Does that make sense?
I think if you don't see the logic in the end of the road of something, and you say, oh, this doesn't make logic now, but will make later, and we're having this philosophy because the others aren't working. That's why we are experimenting this. Of course, it doesn't make sense. I mean, they never had ultimate answers for their ideologies. No, evolution in the core of this, or of this ideology, it doesn't have answer, and it is also proven itself. Communist has proven itself. We have also communists now. They're still saying, oh no, it was a Stalinistic or type of communism. It was a wrong thing, but they didn't follow the right ideology. But it is proven. And if you don't have that, and you say, oh, we'll see on the road, but for now you have to be quiet because we will crush you, that of course doesn't make sense. Of course doesn't make sense. But let me say this: it will make, or people will fake, and people will act like it meant it means something, or it makes sense if they don't have another option. I remember there was this. I read about this missionary, English missionary. He was spreading Bibles during the early 90s. Not 90s, maybe first of the 20th century. And he was going to Turkey, and he passed through Albania. And he said, his name is Alexander Thompson, and he said, I was in the street in the middle of the city in Albania, and here comes trying to sell Bibles, and here comes the priest of the city, and he was barefoot, and he was, he didn't even know what he was talking about in the church because he was speaking in Greek, but he didn't even know Greek language. He was just, repeating what he knew. That how was Albania at that time, The clerics, the people of, the leaders of faith, they didn't know what they were saying. And then comes this ideology. Of course. People, what can they do? They follow that because they are oppressed. and they don't have enough strength to resist that. So again, I come again there, to the same place. So if it was the first century church present, they would have, a choice, and they would have an example and see, oh, no, this doesn't make sense. This makes sense, not intellectually, but also as a meaning of life. So,
Does it kind of come back to the fruits of the system, so to speak, right? If Christianity is showing that transformative power that we see in the early church, or different points throughout church history, it's like, oh, whoa, that makes sense, like you just said. And if that's not there, maybe it's pretty easy to lose it.
I mean, all the history of humanity is focused on church. So everything it's happening because of the church. Everything. So if the church fades its light, these ideas will come up.
Okay.
And the people will follow this. Many people will follow this, and they will, there will be a nightmare every time. For example, even now, Americans think they have escaped communism. But you know what Antonio Gramsci, this communist philosopher, said when he was imprisoned by the fascists in 1930-some? He said, we've watched the nightmare in Soviet Union. So we made some mistakes in this ideology. So we have to rearrange something. These classes, this war of classes that Marx talks about, this war of classes, now we understand that the upper classes, the ones that are the oppressors, they use social institutions like education and media, and they build a system that people don't know, but they are part of that. Which in some, it's true. But he said, look what we have to do. We don't have to do now. We don't have to take the power and then crush the enemy. It was wrong. The proletariat crushing the bourgeoisie class. It was wrong. He said, no, we understand now. They are doing their job through these social institutions. So we have to have the power in these social institutions, education and media. And look what is happening today in the West. Everyone is fighting for education, our children, and media. So the question is communism dead? Yeah, that kind of communism is dead, but it's still alive, and it will come up. Humanity will, I think, with other different ideas, if the church will not shine its light.
It's like there's a vacuum or a void there, and so some idea is going to come in and fill it. Something will, right? That okay. So when we look at something like communism, which we're kind of using as an example, right? Or humanism, fascism, whatever. But you could look at it at its core. Would you say it shares a lot of the same foundations as a religious belief system?
Well, I think the enemy, the devil, never created anything. Just copied everything, Just copied. So he always copied, and the aim was just to do the same thing, but without God. Just put away God. And God and the very core of the nature of God, love, God as a person and love as an action. Everything else, let's stay there. Let's do it like a religion. So, yes, I think they share all the time things that people need people love to see, but without God and without love. These two components. You will not find it in every ideology, these two. Human ideology. God, biblical, description of God, and love. Biblical love.
Ooh, that's such a good point, though, because I'm just thinking of when we did the other episode, on your story and hearing what life was like, in Albania. Yeah, love isn't really the thing that came to mind, which is so ironic, though, because you were saying how the Communist Party was saying things like, we value truth and, laying out all these things that are really important. And yet at the same time, you mentioned how families would report each other to the police and the secret police are watching everything. It's like, wait, if we value truth, that seems really weird and really like upside down. It's like what you call truth isn't even truth. It's very Orwellian, It's like where you flip what the words even mean. You just flip them around almost or something. It's terribly ironic, and it would be funny if it wasn't real. Like it would be a joke. It's so laughable,
But it's
not. It's not a joke,
It happened, and you in those 10 qualities of a good communist, you will not find love there. Sacrificial love. I'm talking about suffering love, sacrificial love. Yes, you have to sacrifice, but for the sake of humanity, not in the sense of bringing humans to a Übermensch, to the Superman. Everyone. So they said they said our goal is one day for people to have such a conscience that they will go to work and will not be paid, but they will go to the shops, will take things as much as they need, not more than that, and everything will be perfect. But without sacrificial love, which means you give all in this life for another person, not for an ideology, in order to bring that person, and that's the condition, in good relationship with God. That's, I think, the definition of love. So, that's what happened, and it's still there. People are still searching.
Yeah, I was going to say, like what you're describing, the underlying philosophy is very much there. It manifests in many different ways.
Yeah, but
the communism being one of them, perhaps.
Yes.
Which is something I want to drill into a little, because so we see communism, like a system like communism, and there's this deep sense that if we can get it just right, we can fix all of humanity's problems. Essentially, we'll become the Superman, or we'll fix all of society's ills because we're humans and we can do this. It's interesting though, because I hear a similar ideology sometimes in America too. America has this sense of like, you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you can become anything you want, you can fix anything, we can do this because we're amazing or whatever. And it's like a very different system than communism, obviously. But there seems like there's an underlying script that's still there. Yeah. That's the same. There's some kind of foundational philosophy that thinks humanity can fix everything.
Yes.
So talk to me about that.
Yeah. Well, the experiments of trying to resolve the problem of humanity without God are continually happening. Going back a little bit to communism, they were saying we will have a conscience like this, that so high, the moral will be so high that we will understand, we will arrive at this point that we will understand that we will take as much as we need. I mean, and it didn't happen. It never happened. The next day that the people were allowed, to be individuals, they just started to, when there was no law, started to kill each other in Albania or in other places, and all the bad things came in Albania. But even in states, when the law somehow, it happens sometimes, when it was a little bit disorder, and the law was slow, people immediately started to fight with each other. So they try to imitate in ideology, at least they try to imitate Acts 4, when it says for the first church that they sold everything and they put in the feet of the apostles to fulfill every need. And then we see the story there, how it continues on. They did it willfully because they believed in resurrection of their Lord, in the power of the resurrection of their Lord. If that is not there, any other experiment will end up the same, will fail. So communism said, hey, we'll do it by force. Like when I read the book of Leonard Verduin, I was amazed. There was a chapter, Der Kommunisten. It was talking about the Munster Rebellion. When they decided to share everything with each other. I mean, they were crazy Anabaptists. So they decided to share anything with each other by imposing a rule, a law to do that. Totally misled and totally opposed to what is saying, what did the first church. But the communists did the same. And that experiment failed. Now say, oh, let's do another, experiment. So we are free. We will resolve the problem of the people by being free. From what? From God or from oppressors like communists. But you are still in chain. That's my point, that you are still in chain, and you don't have power to do that. Will never have power to do what the first church did in Acts 4. Because individualism will never bring you into that level of conscience, which is full of love for other people. And it's for me, it's still the same attempt from a different direction. Like we were talking before, and I said to you, you want to go up to the mountain, and you can go from different to the same point. You can go to the different from the different directions. I mean, the good illustration would not be a mountain, but a ditch, a big ditch. But yeah, you go from other directions. So the same. I see that. Yeah, the same attempt.
Because at the end of the day, at its core, it's still trying to say we humans can do this on our own, and we don't need God. Yeah. That's what you're getting at.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's it just makes me think of Paul writing in Corinthians, that the love chapter. You have all these things, but you don't have love. It's nothing. It's just nothing. And it makes me think, like, let's just pretend, which never would have happened, but let's pretend, communism would have created its perfect ideal, its utopia. But if it would have done it without love, Christianity would look at that and say, it's nothing. Doesn't matter. You did this all wrong, and which I think we'd all say, it wouldn't have been possible for them to do that because their foundation was wrong.
Yes.
They started at they were going to the wrong spot, so to speak.
Well, let me say, let me quote something from Richard Wurmbrand.
Yeah.
He was a pastor, persecuted, tortured in Romania, in communist Romania. And then Western brothers gave money and brought him to the West. And when he went to the West, he wrote this. He said, in the homes of many Western Christians, hours are sometimes spent listening to worldly music. In our homes, loud music can also be heard, but it's only to cover the talk about the gospel and the underground work, so that the neighbors may not overhear it and inform the secret police. We're talking about, not about Albania, we're talking about Romania. In Albania, I don't think there was an underground church, but in Romania, it was. And it displayed the glory of God. How underground Christians rejoice and on those rare occasions when they meet a serious Christian from the West. Persecution has always produced a better Christian, witnessing Christian, a soul-winning Christian. Communist persecution has backfired and produced serious, dedicated Christians, such as are rarely seen in free lands. These people cannot understand how anyone can be a Christian and not want to win every soul they meet. So probably, and I think there's also one element that it's missing every time that these ideologies, start to be, present more and more. Persecution. It's lacking in the church. So to the church. So yeah.
So in humanity's push to create the perfect ideal, at least in your case in Albania, they're trying to build a utopia, and historians look back at that and have made the case that they created probably one of the worst dystopias in history. Albania's been called the North Korea of Europe at the time. It was awful, truly awful. It shows the limitations of what happens to us when we don't live out of love and in the power of the resurrection, like you were saying earlier about the church in Acts. So you no longer live in that system. Communism fell in Albania. As you reflect back on these things and other ideologies that don't have the proper foundation, what is something you're most grateful for now that that's in the past?
For me, now, the only thing that I'm grateful is that there was a possibility for the gospel to come to Albania after communism fell. I'm not grateful at all about, things that have changed. I mean, not having any more, secret police or that type of oppression. I don't think it has changed much in the context of what we're talking just minutes before. It's still another way for another attempt to diminish the display of God's glory on earth. But I'm grateful that God gave me life, and in communism time, like for example, this example in Romania, but in every experimental that humans do, God, the Holy Spirit works in the hearts of the people in every creative way that humans want to put God out of the picture. Every way He finds, a channel to communicate the truth, and I am grateful that He came into my life. It could be during communist time. It could be during, democratic, so-called democratic type of system. But I'm grateful that He came and He rescued me. That's the one thing that I'm grateful, and I'll be grateful for that. Yeah.
So we've covered a lot of different things in this episode. Is there anything in particular you'd like to leave people with, a lesson they can pull from what we see in history, what you lived through, as they go forward after they've heard this? Is there anything you'd like to leave as a lesson?
Yeah, I would like to say and to encourage everyone that is a Christian and is a follower of Christ, that things happen in history, bad things happen in history, and to humanity when we don't light properly by imitating our Lord in our life and following Him as King. And the world will not be better. We can see that better and better. It will not improve. But when we shine our light, more and more people will not be deceived by these type of experiments.
Mm.
However, they will, be creative during the different times, different ages in the human history.
Mm. Yeah, bringing it back to the core of what makes, what sets Christianity apart from the rest of these systems, the rest of the religion, and that's, obviously Christ, but then living out in love, in the power of the resurrection. Those are something these ideologies don't have. They don't have that at their core.
Yes. And we owe to our Lord and to the people. If we owe one thing to humanity, is this: just to live as our Lord in our lifetime that He, decided for us to live. That's what these experiments with humanity teaches us. I don't know how much I want to, or how can I emphasize more, this.
It's a powerful point to leave us with. Thank you for sharing today, Saimir.
Thank you, Reagan, for giving the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to this episode with Saimir. If you found this interesting, we did a whole episode with him on his story of growing up in Albania and how he found Christ after the fall of communism. And you can find that linked down below. He also talked about different points in church history that were relevant to the topic we were discussing in today's episode. And we're doing a whole documentary series on the first 100 years of the Anabaptist story. We have a separate YouTube channel for that. You can find it linked in the description or here on the screen. Make sure to subscribe to that so you don't miss those documentaries when they come out. And of course, you can subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast app. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.